And welcome. This is another Chazaq radio exclusive interview with the one and only, the world-renowned lecturer, Rabbi Mordechai Becher. Rabbi Becher, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
It is our honor
to be with Chazaq.
Yes. We just had an amazing lecture with Rabbi Becher at the Congregation Taurus Emes in Kew Garden Hills, Queens, New York. And Baruch Hashem, it was a full house, and the Rav inspired us all with the situation, the Matzav in Eretz Yisrael and Israel, and he really shed a light about everything. So thank you very much, Rabbi Becher, for that. Rabbi Becher, we're going to start straight into the interview, and I believe our audience, our listenership is curious about the Becher family, about maybe your parents, your wife, your children.
The Becher family. Well, I guess I should start with my parent. My father, Alav Shalom, was born in Poland, and he was saved by deportation. He was in a part of Poland where Stalin and the Russians deported a lot of people. Actually, 80% of the Jews who survived the war in Poland were deported to Russia. So Stalin obviously did not have good intentions here. Right. He wanted to labor. But Baruch Hashem, Hashem's plan was that these people would be saved. So he was in Russia during the war, Sweden afterwards, Italy, and then he came to Australia on the same boat as the first Lubavitchers, who came sent by the two Rebbes ago to Australia to help Yiddishkeit there. And he was on the boat with them from Italy to Australia. And
that explains the rabbi's accent.
That's right. I am Australian, born in Australia. My mother, Tibat L'chaim Tovim, my mother is from England. Her family, her father, who'd lived in London during the First World War, remembered the Zeppelin bombings of London in the First World War, and he believed that it would only be worse in the Second World War because obviously the technology would be better, and he was right. And he decided to move with the entire extended family to Australia. So they moved to Australia. The war broke out when they're on the boat on the way to Australia from England, and they settled in Australia. And they
were saved from the war.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, and myself and my older sister. And
how many siblings?
One sibling, older sister. Yeah. And
where's she now?
She lives in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, she's still in Australia.
Yeah, her husband. They have a wonderful family. Her husband. She teaches English as a second language at one of the universities in Melbourne.
Beautiful.
And her husband's a neurologist, oncologist. They have a daughter, my niece, and married to another Australian boy living in Israel.
Oh, beautiful.
He's actually in the Air Force, officer in the Air Force.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. Her son, my nephew, was in San Khanim, was in paratroopers, now in Australia, and I have two nieces in Australia.
Beautiful.
And Baruch Hashem.
So how about the Rav's family?
So my family, I have a son lives in Tel Aviv.
With what I understand, you don't live in Australia, right?
I live in Passaic, New Jersey.
How did that happen?
It's a long story. I was living after high school. I'd always wanted to go to Israel. My parents had always encouraged me to go to Israel. They'd always loved. We grew up with a tremendous love for the land of Israel and for the Jewish people. And so my father, Alav Shalom, would always pick up a newspaper and say, "Is anything about Israel?" And I say, "No, nothing." He says, "It just throw
next."
Exactly right. It was nothing interesting. It was like, so I picked up that. I went to a school in Melbourne called the Beit Sefer Chaim Nachman Bialik, which is the Bialik school, Bialik College it was called, which is an elementary school, even though it's called college, but in Australia that's right. And
everything's different over there.
So it was a very, very heavily Zionist and very proudly Jewish school. We learnt Ivrit, learned a lot of Hebrew, we learnt geography of Israel.
So that's where your love for Eretz Yisrael.
We learnt Tanakh, we learnt Chumash Rashi. It was not a religious school, but we had a fantastic education.
Beautiful,
yeah, very good. And so I went to Israel and living there for many years, I taught at Or Sameach.
Wait, you went after high school, right?
After high school. I didn't teach Or Sameach right after high school.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, how did that happen?
No. After high school, I went to a yeshiva in Israel called ITRI, which really stands for Israel Torah Research Institute.
Oh, beautiful.
Phenomenal yeshiva.
Is it still around?
It's still around, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's still around. It's in a place called Bet Safafa. It's at the edge of Yerushalayim on the way to Bethlehem.
Interesting.
We used to actually, when I was a student in '78, we used to walk to Kever Rachel, Rachel's tomb.
I wish we could do that now.
We used to actually be able to safely walk there from the yeshiva.
With no issue.
No problem.
Wow.
It was a long walk, but it was doable. And
it's sad that nowadays that's like, oh wow.
Impossible. You know? No, it's impossible nowadays. So I was there. I was later on in another yeshiva called Mishkan HaTorah.
Mishkan HaTorah.
And my Rebbe there was Moshe Shapiro.
Oh, Moshe.
And Ramoshe Rom, Alav Shalom. And then I started teaching Rosh Hashanah after I got married.
You got married in Eretz Yisrael?
Well, actually, it's interesting. Yes, got married in Israel. My wife, Chavi, is from Philadelphia.
She was probably in seminary in Israel, right?
She was in seminary. She finished college. She was in seminary in Israel after college, and she was. Let me say, yeah. So there was a seminary in Israel called Neve Yerushalayim.
Of course.
You've heard of it. So they had an advanced program called Shalhetet. My wife was in the advanced program, and she at that time already, she'd done a Tanakh teacher's course at Stern. She had graduated Bryn Mawr College in English. Was it English literature? I think in Russian was the double majors. So she was an advanced. So she went to Shalhetet. So Neve Yerushalayim used to do an outreach program in Sydney, Australia, called Counterpoint, that was originally started by
Yerushalayim had an outreach program in Australia?
In Sydney, Australia, for about a month a year.
Really?
And it was originally started by Yeshiva University in Melbourne, and they still do it there.
Wow. And
interestingly, when my sister and I went to this program in Melbourne, we were both kids. I think I was 13, she was 15, something like that. And we were kids, and it really encouraged us to get much more into Torah and mitzvahs.
Amazing.
And it really transformed us. And anyway, so that program was being run by Neve Yerushalayim in Sydney.
Which your wife?
My wife was asked to go as one of the teachers.
Oh,
I was asked to go. This is an exclusive story. I was asked to.
Okay, good. I asked for the rabbi before the show. I want an exclusive story. He's like,
I said I can't think of anything.
I said everything already.
That's what I thought.
And look at that.
Amazing. Yeah, Yaniv inspires me. So I basically I heard about this program. I was in yeshiva. I asked my Rebbe Ramoshe Shapiro.
What do you think?
What do you think about me going on this program? He says, what does it involve? I said, I'll have to take a month or two off learning. It's basically non-religious kids. It's a mixed sleepaway camp. I'll be working with a bunch of women from Neve Yerushalayim Seminary. And he said, yes, you have to go.
Well,
I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, A, you'll get to see your parents. He says, B, you'll give something back to the Australian community.
Right, that's where
he
you're
says,
from.
C, it'll be a very valuable teaching experience for you. He says, D, you never know what good will come out of it. So I went. It was a wonderful experience. That experience of teaching Torah for the first time I was really teaching. I decided that's what I want to do.
Wow!
I want to teach Torah. I had such. That was it.
I'm just amazed at Moshe Shapiro's vision.
So be a little more amazed.
I know D is who knows what's going to come out of it.
So the person in charge of the program, Rabbi Jeff Wogelanta, a good friend who's a Rav in San Diego, La Jolla, San Diego, he and Rabbi Revson, who was running the program, thought it would be a good idea for me and not my wife then, but to go out. And so they made the shidduch. We went out, we got engaged, and we went back to Israel and got married in Israel.
Wow,
so,
look at that! What an amazing story.
So I don't know if I'll put it in the same order as Ramoshe Shapiro. I may be like reverse, but nevertheless,
it wasn't.
That was quite an experience. So actually, we met. My wife from Philadelphia and me from Melbourne, and we met in a place called Yarramundi. Just outside Sydney, Australia, at this camp. Yarramundi, for heaven's sake.
Who would imagine?
Right,
Who would imagine? Amazing.
It's not the first word that comes
all those singles out there, as much as they say there's a shit, listen to this story. Interesting, unbelievable.
So anyway, basically, after getting back from there and getting married,
you got married in
Yes, that's right. We got married in Israel.
Or Sameach.
No, learnt in Kollel Mishkan HaTorah
Oh, right. That's interesting.
for a while, and then started teaching at Or Sameach.
And basically, that trip is what opened your doors to the
Absolutely,
teaching, to the
100%.
Kiev world.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So the Rav became a Rebbe in Or Sameach?
Yeah. When I started teaching at Or Sameach, my first job was I don't know what they call it. I think they called it a receiver.
What does that mean?
Well, I know in
Isn't it
football,
yeah.
I believe in American football, you catch the pass and receive it, right? Yeah. So
how does that work in the base matters?
exactly the same way. In other words, Rav Meir Schuster would pick up guys at the Koisel. Rav Meir Schuster Zatzal would pick up guys at the Koisel and would bring them to the various yeshivas. So he'd bring them to Or Sameach,
and you would receive them.
And the person receiving them was me. So I would catch the pass. Rav Meir Schuster Zatzal would throw a pass. I'd catch it.
Rabbi Becher would catch it and run away with him.
Bring him into a shir. So it was an interesting. It was
very interesting method.
And then you know, soon after that, I started teaching, giving regular shiurim there, and I was a rebbe there for I guess it would have been about 6-7 years.
Wow.
And then Or Sameach asked me to go to Toronto. Asked the family to go. Toronto Or Sameach had a branch in Toronto, actually in Thornhill, just up north of Toronto.
Oh, interesting.
It was run by a good friend of mine, Rabbi Avram Rothman. Mm-hmm. Now runs the Thornhill Community Synagogue, or it's an Aish Torah affiliate, and so they sent me there. The truth is, I asked Rav Moshe Shapiro, do you think I should go? And again, he said, "Ata mechuyav."
You're obligated.
You're obligated to go.
Powerful,
He says you're obligated to go. So I said, okay. So
let's go.
We moved to Toronto. My wife, God bless her, says, okay, you know, that's it. We're teaching Torah. So we went to Toronto. We were there. It was a wonderful experience. Very civilized place.
Right.
And it's very clean. Everything runs smoothly. It's amazing. So
right.
It was great. So anyway, and a lot of wonderful people there. So we were there for 4 years.
Oh wow!
But we both decided that we wanted to go back to Israel. We missed Eretz Israel. We wanted our children to feel Israel is home.
At that time, how many?
So at that time we had 4 children.
4? Oh, no.
Yeah.
What are the children's names?
Well, Avram Shimon's the oldest, lives in Tel Aviv, and Pinchas, second oldest.
Where is he?
He is right now in Teaneck. His wife, Mari, just finished nursing school, just graduated, and they're moving back to Israel because he lived there for a while. He was in yeshiva there. He finished army service there, and they're moving back in about a month.
Oh, beautiful!
A little less than a month. They're moving back to Israel. Baruch Hashem, thank God. And so that's he'll be
2 boys.
Yeah, 2 boys, and then the third boy, Shmuli,
You're on a roll.
who is also he's married. They're living in Israel. He's learning in Mir. He and his wife Ahuva, and he's learning in Mir, and they're just back for a month now. So with my first grandson,
Mazel tov.
Israeli, born in Jerusalem, Shlomo, named after my father. And obviously the cutest child in the world. And it goes without saying, mirror image, just like a clone. It's like I have my daughter Miriam, who is starting nursing school.
So I see a few
very soon. She just got back from Israel. She was volunteering at a rehab hospital called Alin for a month, which is mainly with children with respiratory issues. Which was rough. It was during this period.
Right.
She just got back last week, actually. Right. So she is starting nursing.
So all of you guys moved to Toronto to the community.
Then we
Chazaq of the Or Sameach branch, right?
Correct. And then we moved back to Israel after 4 years. Back to Or Sameach.
We
had another boy.
So the Rob has a Or Sameach. Big kasher, huh?
Yeah. And we had another boy then in Israel, Arya, and who's now in Beis Medrash in Teaneck, and. Then
I'm sorry, I'm not so good with geographics. Teaneck, Pesach is one and the same? Or?
No. Teaneck is about 20 minutes by car from Pesach.
Okay,
totally separate
both
community.
in New Jersey.
Both in New
Jersey. I'm a New York guy. I barely leave.
Fair enough. I thought Queens was in Brooklyn, so that's fine. They were talking about Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. I figured, that's the expressway. It goes right through this Brooklyn-Queens area. Anyway, so I found out later on it's a place to avoid anyway. Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, never go. So take the belt or whatever. So then we moved back to Israel. So we're in Israel 4 years, and then after 4 years, again. My teacher, Moshe Shapiro.
Where did he send you this time?
He said he felt that we should move to the States. And there was a organisation that was just starting up then, about 2000, called Gateways, run by Rabbi Mordechai Becher, and also one of the founding lecturers, the founder was Jonathan Rietti.
Right.
And they were looking for another lecturer. And Ramon Shapiro felt that I could do more outside of Israel.
And that's...
it's type of like that guy. There was a famous bank robber, and someone asked him, oh, "Why do you rob banks?" And he said, "That's where the money is." So the truth is, I speak English. I teach Torah to English-speaking Jews.
This is what better place than
this is where the Jews are. So
we out there.
So basically, there was a match between myself and Gateways, and I've been working for Gateways now for I guess it must be 13 years.
Oh wow!
The Shabbat.
So you've been there since its inception, then?
A little after. I can't claim to be a founder, but it's a little after.
But you are a senior lecturer, right?
Yeah, I'm senior because I have white hair. So I look older than the others, so therefore I get the title senior. Right,
so that's hilarious.
I was actually at someone's house recently, a marine park. In Brooklyn. In Brooklyn. I spoke at 5 different shuls there for Shabbos.
Oh wow!
So I'm sitting at the home of my host, and they got a newspaper, one of the From newspapers open, and he says to his son, he says, look, because there was a picture of me in the newspaper. He says, look, this is our orah, this is our guest.
Yes.
And the little kid looks at him and he says, no. And the father says, no, this is our guest. And he says, no. In the picture he's brown, he's white.
They got one of those older pictures when you were young.
Right, the honesty of children. Yeah, that's right. It was a Photoshop picture. You know, it was like.
That's what we love about Photoshop. We can make anyone look.
That's right, but the kid can see right through it. And he's bright.
I can't wait to be one of those senior lecturers. I just have to dye my hair.
That's simple. Greasing 2000. No, that does the opposite. That anyway. So
that's how you came to America?
Yeah, so we came to America. We live in Passaic,
You've always lived in Passaic?
Yep, yeah. Yeah, it's we lived in Passaic.
Have you had a chance to have a kasher of Shapiro also when you're in the States, or?
Yes, to a lesser degree. When I visit Eretz Yisrael, when I visit Israel, I usually go and speak with him. I have phoned him occasionally. I do not like talking to him over the phone.
Right. It's not the same kasher.
It's not the same. It's not the same. So when I'm in Israel, I've spoken to him. He's actually been to the States quite a few times, and he was in Passaic last, and I spoke to him in Passaic.
Oh, beautiful.
So that was wonderful. So that's what we've been. Gateways has been taking up most of my time for the past 30 years. About 2 years ago, I started teaching at Yeshiva University, which has a program there called JSS, James Stryer School. And it is a section of the base medrash of Yeshiva University, but for guys who are not really going to be sitting there in the base medrash. Now, either because they don't know enough, their skills are not very good, some of them non-religious. So therefore, we have about 140 guys. It's been going JSS. Sometimes called Mechina. It's been around since 1950s.
Oh wow!
As an outreach program within YU.
So the Rav is now what's your position over there?
I teach.
You're
going to be teaching next semester. I was teaching courses in Jewish history. I'm going to be teaching the Torah Sheba'al Peh course. We'll do sugyas and sections of the Gemara, the Talmud. I'm going to course in daily practice. I'm going to do something in history of the mitzvahs, counting the mitzvahs, what are the mitzvahs, etc. And we have 140 guys, but about half of them are from South America. We have some guys from Morocco, France, Austria. We have a bunch of Israelis. We have a whole very, very interesting group of guys. And I'll tell you something also amazing in terms of hashgacha, divine providence. I mentioned to you...
I'll tell you, this whole interview is just how divine providence, how you're from here, there, and everywhere.
Well, I mentioned to you that program Counterpoint that YU ran in Melbourne, Australia, which actually got me into to make a decision. Well, that was the second program.
That was your decision to get into Kira, into lectures.
But my decision to go to Yeshiva and to Yeshiva High School was as a result of, at age 13, going to this Counterpoint program run in Melbourne by YU.
Oh, wow.
And the department of YU that ran that program then was JSS.
Oh,
where
wow.
I am,
and now you're
where I am teaching it now.
Unbelievable.
Yes. So that's, Hashem has like brought me, it's pretty amazing.
This is supposed to be an interview, but this is also such a big lesson for all of us. This is amazing, unbelievable, Rabbi Becher.
Yeah, I mean, God is the ultimate chess player.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, behind the scenes there, right, so now I'm teaching there, but that's not. I'm still with Gateways.
You're still with Gateways. You're still giving lectures, not just with Gateways, with everyone.
I do. Yes, I do a lot of. Lecturing as for
Chazaq, the Rav is
and other organizations. Torah Links, which is the Lakewood, has an outreach department.
Oh, really?
Yeah, BMG, Base Medrash Gavoa of Lakewood.
I didn't know that.
Has an outreach program called Torah Links.
Where is this outreach being done in Lakewood?
They do it in. They have branches in New Jersey, in Brunswick, East Brunswick, New Jersey. They have a branch in Cherry Hill.
Interesting.
They have. They're now running a program. They have a whole group of college graduates who they give internships in Manhattan.
Wow.
And give classes to them in the evenings, and they do Shabbos in Lakewood.
Beautiful.
Amazing stuff. So
and the Rav also teaches.
I work with them as well.
Beautiful.
They also, by the way, a lot of people are not aware of this. BMG has an outreach training program there.
No, I didn't know that as well.
And so so I've taught for that quite a few times. And
by the way, BMG is one of the largest yeshivas I could say in the United States.
Certainly, it's definitely the largest yeshiva in the United States.
6,000, I think, students.
At least it is one of the largest yeshivas in the world, and not just large. It's a very good place.
Right,
it's a top quality.
I got to meet some of the Rosh yeshivas, the head of the yeshivas. The Rav Shuster was here recently.
It's an amazing place, but pretty much there's not an area of Torah that you cannot learn. There's always someone learning something in Lakewood, right? It's very much like Mir in Yerushalayim in that sense.
Right. But there's a joke that Mir, you don't have to go to Mir. Mir is coming to you. It's always expanding. It's always getting bigger and bigger.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I have two sons who learnt this.
Yeah.
So that's quite. So
the Rav is also
I do that.
Torah Links. It's called
Torah Links. Yeah.
Torah Links.
Right, and then we have this thing in Gateways. We have a building in the East Village of Manhattan called.
I'm learning a lot over here. I thought I know everything about Kira. I'm involved with Chazaq. With all these different.
Called the Brownstone.
Brownstone.
The Brownstone.
The Brownstone.
Yeah, it's a 6-story building.
What do they do?
Well, we have dormitories there.
Where is this again? I'm sorry.
The East Village in Manhattan, right near New York University, NYU.
Oh wow.
We host groups.
That building belongs to Gateways?
Yeah. We have groups from around the world who we host for a week or a month at a time, who want to see New York, and we give them Jewish content.
Amazing.
So we just finished. I just spoke a few times for a group we had. I was there for Shabbat, for Shabbos. It was a group from Oxford and Cambridge universities in England, and a group of about 25, 30 students who came for a month.
This is probably many of them their first experience, probably, right?
Yeah. And they had internships at firms in New York, and we taught Judaism to them the rest of the time.
Amazing.
So that's it's pretty amazing. Yeah. But everyone wants to see New York,
right?
Except New Yorkers, right?
For all of you outside of the New York area listening to this interview or watching,
in New York, you want to get out of the city. People out of New York, for some inexplicable reason, actually want to come here. I don't know. I don't understand it, but that's how it is.
It's like the people in Eretz Yisrael. I go to Eretz Yisrael. I bring my family along to all these Gedolim, all these Makomas Kedoshim. They're like, we live in Eretz Yisrael. We don't even go to any of this. We don't even realize what we have.
Because we always take for granted.
Yeah, we always do take it for granted. So. It's unbelievable. So the Rav is involved with YU. He's involved with Gateways. He's involved with Torah Links. He's involved. So there's Rav. The Rav. You mentioned to me you were in Flatbush recently for Shabbat. You mentioned to me that you were in Brownstone. I'm sorry.
The Brownstone.
The Brownstone. Are you ever home for Shabbos?
I'm home in where is it? Passaic. Yeah. No. I average maybe about a Shabbos a month away.
Oh wow.
That's the average. When I'm in Passaic, I teach classes in Passaic. I have a Pirkei Avos class.
Where does this take place?
It's at a shul called Eitz Chaim. Which no one actually calls it that in Passaic. We all call it Roths.
Roths.
Okay.
Is that the rabbi of the shul, Rabbi?
Yeah. So it's his. He's not the official. Okay, it's complicated, but
let's get into it.
So we call it Roth.
Is that where the Rav davens?
Yeah, usually. Yeah, most of the time. Although Friday night, I like. I don't know if I should admit this in public, but I happen to be a big fan of Carlebach style davening. I love Friday night. I love singing the davening. So I get into that. So there's actually a close friend of mine, Harry Rothenberg, has a Carlebach minyan in his. He's actually a chavrusa
Rothenberg.
Yeah, it's a famous law firm.
Right.
Probably
That's what I'm trying to.
If-
Okay, tell him to advertise my magazine now. If
Right.
you're watching, Mr. Rothenberg, I see you everywhere in all the publications.
I just learned with him this morning. Anyway, so in his basement he has a Carlebach minion.
Oh, beautiful.
We call it it's a bit of a moderate Carlebach minion. We don't dance.
Just the singing.
We sing. We don't dance. So I usually speak at that.
Oh, beautiful.
And
wait, that's every Shabbos?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Very
Yeah,
nice.
every time. So I speak there. I very often lead the davening. You see, one of the great things about Shlomo Carlebach was he didn't have the awesome voice.
He didn't?
I mean, he was good.
Yeah, I'm
but he
thinking he's known for his
wasn't like a
songs.
great cousin.
Right.
The event. See, anyone can sing Carlebach.
That's
Right?
what makes it.
If I can do it,
Anybody can.
That's the point. You do not have to be the world's greatest cousin.
You can be a regular
You don't have to have a
Jewish
throat
mom.
therapy. You don't have to have voice lessons. Right? And now it may not sound awesome. I'm not always on key, but you know what? With Carlebach staff, anyone
It
can
just
sing.
goes.
It's really great. Yeah. So that's I think one of the things I like about it because
Interesting,
That's
very
right.
interesting. With voice lessons, they tell you don't drink hot before, don't drink cold before, you can't eat too much, your stomach has
You
to
know
be
what?
empty when you speak everything coming from your stomach.
I'm sure Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Health God, world's
Right,
most
right,
famous
the
cousin,
cousin, yeah.
right? Who has been to Gateways a couple of times.
Oh, really?
Yes. So yeah, right. So obviously
You can-
you don't need to be health god to do Carlebach.
That's
you know?
right.
That's what I meant. Right.
That's a new line that Rabbi Becher just made up.
There you go. Yeah. So, I get royalties if you repeat this. So.
Okay, Rabbi Becher, unbelievable. So we discussed your family. We discussed how basically you became world renowned, I guess, in a sense, through how it became. But one thing you didn't discuss is your books. I know that the Rav has a book.
Okay, so I have two books
Two
which
books.
I wrote. I should say we. It was two
Who's
books
we?
I wrote with my chavrusa.
Oh,
So I
interesting.
have a chavrusa, Reb Moshe Newman.
Where is he from?
He lives in Yerushalayim. He's from somewhere in Baltimore, Frederick. I don't know, somewhere in Baltimore,
one of those
which no one's ever heard of, except for him. So he teaches at Or Samach in Yerushalayim. We studied together for many years. So we wrote two
Wait, how
books.
did you guys study? If he's in Baltimore, you
No, he lives in Yerushalayim now. He's from there.
Oh, you used to learn
When we-
Chavrusa.
We learnt when we were teaching at Or Samach. We were both teaching at Or Samach.
Right.
And we both studied together.
So
we had a
you learned
chavrusa,
it.
and we used to also play squash together.
What's squash? I'm sorry.
Squash is a game similar to racquetball,
Oh,
which is played in an enclosed court.
Right.
But the ball is a bit less bouncy. The rackets are smaller, and there's slightly different rules. It's a more English version of the game. Squash, very, very. It's a very difficult game, I must say. I used to be very good. Moshe was actually better, unfortunately, right? But I used to be good at squash, so I'll tell you an interesting story. We used to play in Yerushalayim at YMCA.
What? Oh, the Y.
Now YMCA had a fantastic gym in Jerusalem.
They had one in Yerushalayim?
They still do, yeah.
Interesting.
And it's now you probably know YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yes, so that's what YMCA stands for, Young Men's Christian Association.
What's that? Okay.
So I happen to know that I and at least 15 other rabbis that I know were members of the gym. So here I am. I've got a card-carrying member. It says Rabbi Mordechai Becher, Young Men's Christian Association. So that's what we used to play. So someone said to me, "How can you do that?
Right.
You're a rabbi. You can be a member of this Christian association. What's going on?" I said, "Well, I don't know. It's a gym. I mean, I pay them money. I get to use the gym."
Okay.
So he says, "It's wrong. It's wrong. You shouldn't do that." So, so we went. Rabbi Newman and I went to ask Rabbi Yashiv.
Ooh.
So Rabbi
Rabbi
Yashiv,
Yashiv, everyone
he was
definitely knows. I'm
one
saying.
of the greatest halachists, legal authorities
Of our
what
times.
we call halachic decisors. No one actually calls it that. That's an academic term, but a poskim of our time. So at that time, this was in the 80s. He was more accessible. So we went to see him, and so first of all, we had to describe to him what is squash. You have to understand.
I had a hard time understanding.
He's a gentleman, a Torah scholar.
He's learning
who's spent his
24/7.
entire life in Jerusalem, 24/7, 365, immersed in Talmud. Right? So to describe, so we're trying to say, okay, so he says, so what are you asking? So, well, we play squash, he says, Mazeh. So we say, well, you go into this room and you have these long sticks and we hit a ball, he says, and then, well, we hit it against the wall. And he says, yeah. We say, well, it bounces back and then he hits it against the wall. And he's saying, vase. And we say, well, we keep doing that until you can't hit it. And he's looking at us like we're insane. So
that's what it is.
I think he thought we were going to ask for a blessing for a healing or something like that. But okay, but he figures Americans, all right, anyway. So I said, okay, so we play it at YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association, and someone mentioned to us that we should not be members or giving them money. He says, basically, what's the situation? Are you giving them a donation? I said, no, we're paying them for services.
Right.
They supply us, we're allowed to use the gym, we pay them for services.
Right.
And that's it. He says, you can buy from a Christian store.
That's right.
He says, then you can go to a gym. He asked, he says, in the place where you play this game, right, squash, are there any crucifixes? And the guy said, no. He says, fine. So there you go. So anyway, that was
wow.
So anyway, Rabbi Moshe Newman and I studied together, and we wrote 2 books.
Right.
Both of them really out of print, but
oh really?
One's called After the Return.
Who knows? After this interview, we're gonna have some listeners.
Maybe if anyone wants to sponsor sure. So one's called After the Return, which is advice for people who have returned to Judaism, how to maintain their normality. Yeah, exactly. How to maintain their normality and how to maintain their family.
Beautiful.
So that was our first. It's in English.
So this is not available. If I go to the local Judaica store,
maybe.
Okay, you'll make sure to give your contact information afterwards?
Okay, sure.
Beautiful.
The second book we wrote...
So the first one's After the Return?
After the Return. The second book we wrote is called Avoisos Ahava, which means cables of love.
Cables of love.
God says that I will draw you close with cables of love.
What's the Hebrew of that?
Avotot Ahava.
Avotot Ahava.
And it's about halachic issues of outreach.
Oh, interesting. That'll be good for me.
It'll be good for you. I'm happy to give you a PDF copy of it.
Okay, beautiful.
So it's a halachic. Basically, it's in Hebrew. It's advanced.
Oh, it's a Hebrew book.
It's Hebrew. Advanced.
But the first one also no.
No, first one's English. This one's Hebrew. Advanced halachic discussion of all the various issues. Not all, but many of the various issues that come up in outreach.
Doing care.
And the third book I wrote, which is called Gateway to Judaism, published by Art Scroll, Sha'ar Press.
The first 2 were just published by yourself?
One was, both Feldheim.
Feldheim, got it.
And the third book I wrote by myself, it's called Gateway to Judaism, the what, how and why of Jewish life.
Beautiful.
And basically I go through the Jewish life, in other words, from marriage, birth, circumcision, naming, right, etc., all the way through.
Circle.
And then I do the daily cycle and the yearly cycle, and commandments of relationships and all this, basically covered
all in one book.
Yeah, it's a mere 400 or 500 pages.
Amazing. Wow.
Footnotes as well. Basically, I try to give you show the unity of Jewish law and Jewish philosophy.
Beautiful.
And give you and I also have a family in there who I describe, like after I talk about the laws of.
Right.
I tell you, I give a little chapter what this family does. So if you want to see like a little story. So, and interdispersed are their practices and the customs of the Jewish people. There's also extensive footnotes. I have at the end of each chapter, I have the laws of what I spoke about, the philosophy.
And how you can find it.
In addition, I have a reading list at the end of each chapter of where to go further study. And I have some appendices.
I'm interested in this book.
So it's actually interesting. I'll tell you who bought it.
Who bought it?
First of all, well, I mean, a lot of people have bought it. But aside from the individuals who have bought it, a lot of Batei Din, Jewish courts, use it as a textbook. No, textbook for people who want to convert to Judaism.
Oh, wow.
So, number one. Number two, the United States Air Force and Army bought a few hundred copies to give to their chaplains.
Really?
Because chaplains have to cater to all denominations, because there's not enough, let's say, rabbis to go around for every unit, etc. So therefore, they wanted a book that they could give to their chaplain, who gives an understanding of the philosophy and the practices and the customs of Judaism, and they can read it and actually be able to help their Jewish.
That is amazing.
Their Jewish
brothers.
Their Jewish
army
congregants,
servants,
soldiers, etc. So that's who's bought it. It's also, I know, used as a couple of colleges who, in their basic Judaism, in their Judaism 101, they use that as a textbook.
Amazing, amazing. What was the book again called? I'm sorry?
And also, a good friend of mine told me it's the ideal size to put his monitor on, so that it holds
That's another reason
eye level. So It's called Gateway to Judaism.
Nothing to do with gateways.
No, it just happened to be the
Just
same.
happened to be the-
Fortuitous. Yes. Called Gateway to Judaism.
Gateway to Judaism.
And it's published by R. It's available on Amazon. And,
That's also you stopped the printing for that?
No. There's still,
Okay. So the first two were.
This is in its 7th printing now. So
Oh wow!
people still buying it.
So
and,
it's going like hotcakes. Amazing. Could you give us some information about how one can contact the rabbi, or where we can get a hold of any of these 3 books?
Well, the third book, Gateway to Judaism,
Is available
Jewish bookstores.
worldwide.
Any good Jewish bookstore. If it doesn't have it, automatically
It's not a good one.
Jewish.
Done.
But no,
X'd
seriously,
out.
any Jewish bookstore should have it. I believe Barnes and Noble has it, and
Artsco's website.
Artscroll has it on their website. Amazon has it.
So it's all over.
Don't contact me for it because Amazon gets it cheaper than I do. So I guess I don't have the same buying power that Amazon does. Yeah. So the other 2 books not really available. If anyone's really interested in getting them, you can get them from me. And it's, I'll just give you, I guess I'm opening up myself to this. If I give my email...
you might get, what, should I make your life easier? Contact our office?
Contact Chazaq. There you go.
So whoever's interested in the first 2 books, or maybe the third one, I don't know, maybe you're in Chinatown or whatever, somewhere there might not be a Judaica store. These videos go very viral, very fast.
I'm sure,
it's like
right.
shocking. We get phone calls on a consistent basis from Wilhelpetsville and saying, I just heard this, and we're like, oh, cool. And we didn't know people are down there. Anyway, so the phone number is 718-285-9132, 718-285-9132. Should I do that slower? 718-285-9132. Email info@chazaq.org, info@chazaq, with a Q, Chazaq with a Q. I told you guys the story with the Q. I'm not going to repeat it. Anyways, so those are the 3 books. So we discussed the being a lecturer. How about give us, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I forgot to mention another thing I do.
Another book?
But no.
Another thing you do.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was going to ask you about being a lecturer. You go to all these interesting towns.
Correct.
I'm saying, could you maybe just relate to us some of the places you've been in the, I guess, many years that you've been speaking?
Gosh.
You've been everywhere, huh?
If we go north, I've been to, my wife and I taught in Moscow.
Really?
Pre-Glasnost. Before, when it was still illegal, under the communists.
Wow.
So that was the most, that was probably one of the most exotic locations.
Your wife is also a lecturer?
Yeah, my wife teaches. She teaches at Beis Yaakov in Passaic. Psychology.
Does she give lecture? Is she like a speaker, travels the world like you?
No, she doesn't travel. But she
has to stay with the kids.
She gives classes. She gives classes on Tanakh and Jewish thought to ladies, and it's excellent classes. I must say, without any.
It's not because she's
prejudice.
Your wife, right?
No, absolutely.
Nothing to do with it.
Best classes I've ever heard on Tanakh.
That's where he gets his share. He isn't. Interesting. So I'm sorry, I interrupted. You wanted to say something else that you did.
No, it's all right. We were just train of thought was about the exotic places.
Yeah, exotic places.
So Moscow, my wife and I taught there.
Yeah, that's well.
That was quite something. That was pre-Glasnost and Perestroika.
Right.
So we had a little a tablet. Not a tablet, electronic tablets. They weren't invented yet.
Right.
We had an actual, what they call a tablet, to write on in the room because the room was bugged. We even had a code name that we'd get onto public phones to call the people we were speaking to. We'd meet them at the metro, the subway. What we'd do is we'd always take the stop one past where we were going, cross to the other side of the platform, and see if there was anyone following us on the way back. Right. I probably think that the KGB was a little smarter than us. They're more experienced. But at least we got followed only once.
Oh yeah.
That was interesting because there was a international book fair in Moscow at the time, and the Soviets had allowed the Israelis to have a stall there.
That's shocking.
And however, that was the only stall that was blocked off to public access. And if you wanted to get in, a KGB agent would record your name and identity.
Gosh.
So we arranged with the Israelis what they wanted to do. There were refuseniks there in Moscow who wanted Steinsaltz Gemaras. That's a modern Hebrew translation, because they all spoke modern Hebrew, a lot of these refuseniks. They wanted a translation of the Talmud in modern Hebrew, Steinsaltz. However, the Soviet Union would count the amount of books the Israelis left with to make sure they didn't leave any Jewish books behind.
Oh, wow.
So, the refuseniks gave us a bunch of prayer books that had been given to them, Reform prayer books, which they were not interested in.
Right.
And we gave those to the Israelis. We met the Israeli at the hotel. We gave them the Reform prayer books, so you'd have the same amount of books leaving. And he gave us Steinsaltz Talmud, which we then gave to the refuseniks. So we did do a little smuggling. We also brought in 2 suitcases worth of stuff. That we left with none of it, just stuff that they could sell. We had a high-end Nikon camera kit, which the one of the refuseniks told us if a family sells that on the black market, they can live for a year. Because as soon as you applied for a visa to Israel, you'd lose your job.
Right.
So that means that we brought in stuff, and so that was
that's interesting.
That was fascinating. That was an interesting lecture place. That was
how long ago was that about?
That was in 1985, I guess. It was.
Wow. That's the
and I've just been around just all over the United States.
Right.
Jacksonville, Florida, and I've been to Canada, Calgary, Alberta, and just all the way south, all the way north.
I hope the rabbi's okay with traveling.
Actually,
I know
the truth is I don't mind traveling.
You don't mind. That's good.
I actually, it depends how I'm flying, but I usually like traveling. So
for me, traveling far is just from Queens to Brooklyn. That's already too much for me.
Because I like traveling, I've also done led some tours.
Oh, really?
Is
that the other thing that
I do a lot of tours? That's right. Yes, I do tours. So I've led gateways. We've taken students to different parts of Europe.
Really?
So I've done Prague, Vienna, Rome, Budapest.
That's very touching because you mentioned to me that your father was from there, right?
Well, he's from Poland.
But
he went via Italy to get to Poland. But so that's fascinating. I mean, that's interesting.
I've taken college students.
Many groups, college students. More recently, actually, the best tour I ever did. It was unbelievable, amazing, just in terms of the impact on people. Rabbi Akiva Tatz, who's a good friend of mine. We were both in yeshiva together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Mishkan HaTorah, that with Moshe Shapiro. So that
yeshiva is where all the big speakers came from.
So he organized. Actually, I don't know if you know Rabbi Menachem Nissel.
Of course, he speaks for Chazaq also.
He also learned there.
Oh, interesting.
Rabbi Jeremy Kagan. He runs a seminary in Yerushalayim, and he's written a few books. He also studied there. So
interesting. So a lot of big names from there.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a good place. Anyway, we took
tours.
We're talking about the
tours.
The tours, yeah.
So Rabbi Akiva Tatz.
Yeah. So Akiva Tatz,
the best one.
So I got diverted by Mishkan. Right. So he recruited, together with some other people, 40 non-religious students from all over the world, mostly from the United States, and we had a completely subsidized trip to Africa.
Amazing.
Where we spent a week in Kruger National Park, basically doing game drives, which is going out and seeing the animals, barbecues, and shiurim classes.
That's exciting.
So, almost 2 weeks, barbecues, game drives, classes. It was unbelievable. We were like, it's unbelievable. First of all, I had meat for 2 hours. I don't think I was dairy once in 2 weeks.
Wake up in the morning, breakfast, barbecue.
So it had a great impact. A lot of the guys went to yeshiva afterwards. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So that was good. Also, I started doing more recently these tours with a group called Legacy Tours.
Oh, interesting.
It's run by Miriam Schreiber. It's Chicago.
Chicago.
It's not only people from Chicago, but it's tours of places, Jewish tours.
Where have you toured?
So last year we did China. We had 80 people came to China with us.
You're amazing.
I did it together with
I interrupted you when you were going to tell me about something else you do, and then I asked you about the weird places you go, and you connected the two together.
So China. So
China.
Went last year, 80 people, together with another friend of mine from yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov Lerfeld, who's a Rav in Staten Island, and we were chavrusas in Itri.
Oh wow!
So he's a choshev Rav, and it was amazing.
80 people in China.
80 people in China. This year we did it again. We were in China. I got back 2 weeks ago.
How is to walk around over there?
Fantastic.
How did you get
it's first of all, it's very safe.
Do they speak English?
Most Chinese do not speak English, but the tour guides, the hotel staff, everyone you need to speak to, and when you're bargaining in the marketplace, they use calculators to show you the amount. They'll punch in 800 and you'll punch in 50 when you show them. And then they go,
how does it work with kosher food?
And then they punch in. So first of all,
bargaining over there is probably it's fun, huh?
It's a sport. I'm not very good at it. I think the Chinese people say, "Oh, Becher. Yeah, that's good. We're going to make some money here, right? Yeah. So I didn't do well in the bargaining, I must say. Right. So, but it's an amazing, very interesting place. There's a lot of Jewish history there, by the way.
In China?
In China.
I understand Shanghai.
Shanghai is more recent.
Right.
Shanghai, most people are just familiar with the fact
That's all I know.
Second World War and Mir.
Yeah,
so first of all, to expand it a bit, it wasn't just Mir. Mir was 500 people.
Right.
400. We're talking about 20,000 Jewish refugees were in Shanghai during the Second World War.
That's something many people I think don't know.
You want to expand a little more, there were much of modern Shanghai economically and in terms of the physical structures was built by a handful of wealthy Sephardi Jewish families who were there at the beginning of the last century. The Sassoons.
The Sassoons?
You've heard of the Sassoons? Kaduri, Hardun. I don't know if they're related. The Kaduri from Iraq originally. Sassoon, Kaduri, Hardun, Abraham. These four families were probably the wealthiest people in all of China at the beginning of the 20th century, built some of the most magnificent buildings in Shanghai, and were instrumental. One of them, Hardun, was the person responsible for building the shul in which the Mir studied while they were in Shanghai. What people don't know is that in the 19th century, through till about 1940s, there was two large Jewish communities in the north of China, one in Harbin in Manchuria, which was mostly Russian Jews, numbering close to 25,000 at its heyday, with shuls and a yeshiva and a Talmud Torah and a hospital and a soup kitchen. The Rav was Rav Kiselev, who was a student of Rav Chaim Soloveitchik.
Wow.
He was in Harbin. There was another Jewish community in Tianjin, also a very important Jewish community there, and that goes back to the 19th century. You want to go back even further, I could talk about this for hours. You go back even further, there was a place called Kaifeng, K-A-I-F-E-N-G, and there were Jews there from, they believe, around the 11th century, down the time of Rashi. Jews who came from Persia on the Silk Route via India to China, stayed in China, a few hundred families. We have records of them going back to hundreds of years, to the 11th, 12th century. Unfortunately, they almost completely assimilated. Their descendants still call themselves the Kaifeng Jews, but they have no, they're not, halachically they're not Jewish.
They're not, because they married...
They intermarried for hundreds of years, and they don't really keep anything. They do, one Jewish thing, they sell yarmulkes which say, made in the Chinese community of the Jews of Kaifeng. So they're in clothing and retail, so they do have some Jewish customs. Right, yeah. But 10 of them...
Is anyone able to come to these tours?
10 of them, right, actually, just before you get there, 10 of them actually came to Israel and converted and became fully faithful Jews. They studied in the yeshiva, Machon Meir.
How did they get to that point?
There are people in the community who are interested.
I'm saying if they're a Kaifeng Jew, then
they're interested. There's one particular guy there, I forget his name, but he actually was so interested that he went to Israel for a year, studied in Bar Ilan University, speaks fluent Hebrew, and he actually encouraged people to go and convert. So he himself is not Jewish.
Oh wow!
So
something's just shedding a light. When I look at the statistics for our ratings and I see China, I'm like, it's probably an accident or something.
Well, there are contemporary Jewish communities. There's a few thousand Jews in Shanghai.
Now that I didn't know.
A few thousand in Beijing, and a few thousand in Hong Kong. Now you asked about kosher food there.
So if that's the case, then there's no issue.
Thank God for Chabad.
Oh yeah.
So Shanghai and Beijing. And they both have a Chabad house with a kosher restaurant, very good kosher restaurants.
Restaurants?
Yes.
The Chabad house has a restaurant?
Chabad house has a restaurant and a shul and a school and a grocery store in both places. And there's, in addition, in Shanghai, there's a Sephardi center with a shul and a restaurant and a small yeshiva.
That's interesting.
And they have guys studying...
Shuls with restaurants. This is like a new...
Right. Well, you see, shul restaurant. And... we actually were there. We ate at the Sephardi Center in Shanghai, and together with the Israeli vice consul in Shanghai, who is a religious Jew.
Really?
And he actually gives a Dvar Torah. He gives a little Torah thought at the Sephardi shul every Shabbat, because he lives in the same building. She comes down. So interesting person and interesting community. Hong Kong has a community, has a school, goes from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Amazing.
They have 4 shuls at least. There are 2 shuls with daily minyanim in Hong Kong, and at least 3 restaurants. And I tell you,
you don't understand. This is for us. Is like, what? No way. And I'm saying we don't know this stuff.
It's incredible. I met a rabbi in Hong Kong. He's the Rav of the Sephardi community in Hong Kong. His name's Rav Natanel Me'oded. He's a student of the Chevron Yeshiva in Israel. He has smicha from Rav Avadji Yosef. He is a great Torah scholar. And the best souvenir I got from China, better than the ties and the knockoff Mont Blanc pens and Toomey bags and everything else, the best souvenir I got, he gave me a copy of his book of Responsa.
Oh, he has a Shelas Tshuva as well.
That he wrote in Hong Kong, called Mimizrach Shemesh, East of the Sun. So it's a fascinating book of questions that he was asked by his community in China. So it's fascinating. And
what was the rabbi's name again? I'm just sorry.
Natanel Me'oded.
Do you know if his sefer is out there or not really?
I haven't got a clue. I got it in Hong Kong. I never looked for it anywhere else. So. And he was
very, very interesting, Rabbi Becher. So, I'm telling you one thing, I'm scared that this interview could go on and on forever because it was such an interesting experience. We're going to have another follow-up interview in the near future, hopefully, with Rabbi Becher. I'm going to have to cut you short. I know there's much more to talk about. Yeah. I know that our show is about an hour long, and the next show is going to start late, and then he's going to kill me and say, oh yeah. Rabbi Becher, it was a pleasure having you. Chazaq u'baruch for everything that you do for Am Yisrael. Keep it up.
My pleasure. Pleasure meeting you.
Hashem should give you more koach and energy to continue. Amen. This was another.
Thank you.
Yeah, you wanted to close
I was just going to say thank you very much for the privilege of speaking for Chazaq.
Are you kidding me? It's our pleasure more than it's yours.
No, it's mine. Okay. We argue about this to go another hour. So.
Okay, after the show we'll fight it out. Take it outside, okay? So this has been another guest hour at the Chazaq Radio. My name is Yaniv Meirov. My guest this week was Rabbi Mordechai Becher, the world-renowned lecturer and author. Amazing interview we had over here. You can listen to this online at chazaqradio.com, CHAZAQ radio.com. If you have any questions or comments about this show or any other show, that's radio@chazaq.org, radio@chazaq.org. Call us at any time with questions or comments as well, 718-285-9132. Have a great day, and thank you once again, Rabbi Becher.